Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Mobility Engineering's question and answer series. We've received another question in regards to vehicle adaptations and road safety, and so what I thought I'd do is get on here and film it and get the answer out there for you and also for everyone else that's interested to find out the information. So today's question, I will just read it out for you. It comes in from Hazel, who's an occupational therapist. We love occupational therapists. Says, hi guys, I recently attended one of your informative education sessions on vehicle adaptations, which we do, thank you very much. And if anyone's, by the way, interested in registering for one of these sessions, please contact the office and we'll put you into one of the sessions. That's no worries at all. Basically what she has asked is, I currently have an NDIS client and I'd value your knowledge on the process of organising trials for scooters versus power chairs for him to be able to access the community, which is definitely what we want to support. He will be mainly travelling around via public transport, which will be train, taxi or various carers' cars. My question is whether you are aware of taxis which have been modified to accommodate scooters as well as power wheelchairs. Knowing this will greatly help with justifying between the two. Alright, so first of all, Hazel, thank you once again for your question. That's a great question. It's a very common one that we get, or something relatively common that we get. So we thought we'd get on the video. We do a little bit of research around it, find the bits and pieces that you need to know, and get on the video and answer it so other people can benefit from that as well. So there's a few layers to this answer, and I've written a few notes down just so I apologise for glancing at them, just to make sure we get the right information. First of all, travelling in a wheelchair in Australia is a bit complicated, and it's a little bit of a grey kind of a political area. The deep root cause of the issues that are around vehicle adaptations and transporting disabled persons around Australia is that, or particularly people in a wheelchair, is that the wheelchair occupant, as per Australian vehicle laws, vehicle design laws, is actually not classified as an occupant. They're not classified as a human, they're classified as a piece of cargo. Now, personally, this is something which really bothers me, and I think it's one of the worst representations of our government out there, and the fact that they are not raising the standards for disabled occupants, and this is one of the reasons why we are so passionate about this industry, and we want to change that effect on the Australian government. So because of that, but the root cause of that, this is not a political statement, but the reason why I'm talking about this is because there is actually no laws and regulations on, scooters or wheelchair carriers or anything like that. There's just law just says you've got to tie people down. So what we try and do is give you guys what we believe is best practice based on 20, 30 years of occupant protection in vehicles. So first of all, I'll talk about some standards and some guidelines that we've found. So there is an organisation called Transport. They are a defunct organisation, however they were around for a long time, providing advice and information for people to transport around with their disabled passengers. They've got what they call the Yellow Book, or the Bible of transporting disabled persons in Australia. This is a fantastic publication. If you can get your hands on it, it's got some guidelines on what you need to do. Another thing that we came across was actually fantastic, was from the South Australian Transport Government website. It's called Disability Information. And this document has got all the little bits and pieces, ins and outs. And the last and most important document you need to be aware of is an Australian standard. The Australian standard is AS 3696, and in section 19 it talks about wheelchairs versus scooters and how to travel around. But AS 3696 is the Australian standards for transporting persons with who are disabled. So this is a great document for you to be, if you're a professional in the industry particularly, it's a great document for you to have your hands on. It does cost money for you to buy. You just go to the SAI Global or Standards Australia website and you can buy that document. So, scooters versus power wheelchairs. First of all, the taxi industry actually does not allow scooters in general into their vehicles while you are sitting on the scooter. So the short answer to the question is no, you can't use a scooter in a taxi, so you need to look at the power wheelchair option. But I'll elaborate on that just to give you a little bit of background information and also to provide people with more info. So in general, a scooter is not allowed to be travelled on top of. You are allowed to ride your scooter into the vehicle, transfer onto another seating position, and then that's okay, and leave the scooter tied down. The reasons why is because, well, it is possible, anything is possible, but from what we've seen, we've never seen this happen. So the main core reason why you can't travel around is that a scooter has not been designed for that purpose. So you've got handlebars which are in front of you, so in the event of an accident, your head can impact into those handlebars. You have a seat which is not very secure. Typically they're only a little grub screw or some kind of hand screw, so you can take them in and out for transport. You also have no real wheelchair tie down points and a lot of plastic structure which will not hold if you strap it down and have your weight on top of it in the event of an accident. So those factors are the main reason why you cannot have a scooter. However, in general, the scooters are not designed for transport. So that's kind of a, be all and end all. We can't do it. But if you want to know the background why, that's the reason why. Now, it's not to say it's not possible. I always say my motto is anything is possible. So how would it be possible? It would be possible if the scooter has been designed and tested for occupant transport. And as I said, we've been around this industry for a very long time, more than 10 years now, and we've never seen such a device. So there could be one out there, it's news to us and we'd love to hear about it, but at this stage you cannot transport around sitting on your scooter. Wheelchairs. Now, power wheelchairs are definitely okay. Basically, since there is no rules and no guidelines and no official sort of rules, there is, as I said, there is the Australian standard, but that's not even in legislation. So there isn't actually any official legislative rules. So what we talk about is what's in those standards, and what we talk about is best practice guidelines based on industry information, research that's been done on crashes, and our experience in dealing with multiple authorities and vehicles that have been in crashes. So first and foremost, look for the following in your wheelchairs. 1, tie down points. So you will see either little loops or little brackets or something on your actual wheelchair that is designed for it to be tied into a vehicle. If it doesn't have tie down points, we really don't recommend for you to be using it. If it does have tie down points, then it's a pretty good chance that this thing has been tested and it's okay for vehicle transport. But even if it does have tie down points, brings us, now that I mentioned testing, brings us to the next point of testing. So wheelchairs, there are multiple wheelchairs on the market. There's thousands of wheelchairs on the market, and the reason why is because everybody needs something for their need or needs something for their issue or whatever it is that they need it for. So everyone is slightly different. So there is so many different variations of wheelchairs to suit for everybody's individual needs. So that makes the situation a bit complicated, because if you had just one product, you could easily test it, you could easily say, yep, this thing is automotive, and it's all good, we can travel around in vehicles, and away you go. But when you have multiple models, it makes it quite challenging, it makes it quite expensive, and it also is just difficult to keep a handle on. So sometimes it comes down to you as the consumer, or you as the prescriber, to be aware of what you need and what you don't need. So if the wheelchair is going to be transported in the vehicle, we really recommend that it's crash tested. Now, how do you know is it crash tested? Most of the time it's not labelled, most of the time you don't really have any clear information. The only way you can really tell if it's crash tested is by clear, printed, documented information. So typically speaking, we'd say a test report or some kind of test certificate to show you that this thing has been tested to a certain standard and certified to that standard, right? Now, the standards that we use are typically the international European standards, so they will have an ISO in front of them or an E in front of them. The American standards are also the DOT and the FMVSS standards. If they meet any of those standards, they are okay. Australia doesn't have its own specific standard. There is that Australian standard that I spoke about. However, that's just a copy and paste of the ISO standard. So what you will find is all the manufacturers will basically they will comply to the ISO standard, because it then allows them to also sell their product to Europe and to other countries. Whereas if they only comply to the Australian standard, then they would only be allowed to sell to Australia, and most companies prefer to sell internationally because in Australia we have a small consumer market. So how do you get the copies of the test reports? Ask the people that you're buying it from. Don't trust people that say, yeah, don't worry, it's tested, yeah, you can trust me. We never trust anyone like that. Well, it's not to say that those people aren't trustworthy, but we trust only the paperwork. Because the problem is, when it comes down to if there's any issues, if there's any liability claims, if there's a crash, if there's an injury, nobody cares about anything except what's on the piece of paper. That's how the legislative environment works in Australia. That's how the laws and the courts work in Australia. So that's basically what we always advise you, is that don't just listen to the guy's word or the girl's word. Also get a copy of the reports. Get documented evidence that this wheelchair is suitable for it to be crash tested. If the wheelchair is not crash tested, it doesn't mean you can't use it. What it means is what you should be using is a backrest for the wheelchair. You can actually purchase a separate device backrest, which we'll try and put onto your screen here. Or if not, I'll put a link in the notes down the bottom to a page. There is a product called the Bodyguard. This Bodyguard is a device that comes in behind your wheelchair and it acts as a backrest and a headrest, or a head restraint should I say. So this particular product turns your non-automotive tested wheelchair into an automotive okay product, because what it's done is it has introduced, this seat is not tested, but it has introduced a tested backrest and head restraint to allow this seating position to now be very secure and very safe for the occupant. Last but not least, what we always recommend is 3-point over-the-shoulder seat belts. So just the lap-only straps are not good enough for the occupants. As I said, they get away with that even though the rest of the vehicle doesn't have to, even though the rest of the vehicle has to wear over-the-shoulder seat belts, but occupants that are disabled, as I said before, don't fall in under these same laws, so as a result, they can get away with having only lap belts. Our recommendation is to refuse the use of lap belts and to only use Lap-Sash over-the-shoulder seat belts. This gives you optimum and prime upper body protection and protects your spine. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your question, Hazel. Hopefully that answers what you've got, and hopefully some other people have benefited from this as well. Thank you.